The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Having been married and having walked my daughter down the aisle for her wedding almost 3 years ago, I think I can make this analogy. The NFL draft and weddings. Now, hear me out. A lot of buildup, a lot of drama, a lot of planning, a lot of second guessing, not necessarily on the marriage, but it just has an unbelievable buildup to what is usually a pretty good event. And with the draft, while it's not 100%, what you do at the top of the draft is like a 25% hit rate on quarterbacks. The buildup is similar. It's insane, except here's the difference here. If you want to equate the NFL draft to a marriage, it would be like you got the groom set, and the groom really doesn't reveal to those in the crowd, in the either the church or the synagogue or the hall, wherever the wedding is held, doesn't reveal to the guests who the bride is going to be. We don't know who the bride is going to be until she arrives at the altar and removes her veil and okay, it's that one, because I thought you might go with the other one. What about the high school sweetheart? No, it's the one from college. No, it's the one that you met 3 years ago. And so that's what we go through every year. And it's just, it's an unbelievable dance that happens prior to the draft. And fortunately, it all comes to an end tonight. So in less than 12 hours, we will know who the Commanders are taking at number 2. It appears the betting favorite is Jayden Daniels, but this is just speculation. We don't know. And look, it's entirely possible there could be a trade. It could happen at the last moment. It's unlikely they would trade out of number 2. Adam Peters has said as much, but you never know. You never know. So we're going to dive into all that. If you missed Mel Kiper a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to play some of his conversation coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. But lots and lots of draft yak to get to. But one baseball thing to get out of the way. And I watched this yesterday as the Orioles played an afternoon game in Anaheim to finish up the road trip and to win the series, which they have done on a regular basis now. So it comes down to this. The Orioles blow a 6-0 lead. It's now 6-5 in the bottom of the ninth inning. There are 2 outs. And at that point that the Angels, with a speedy base runner, Joe Adell, he's going to try and steal second base because with 2 outs he can score in a single and send the game into extra innings. And sure enough, there's a steal attempt, and James McCann, the catcher, backup catcher for the Orioles, throws down to second base to Gunnar Henderson, and it's a very, very close play, and Joe Adell is called out, which would end the game. Jim Palmer, who's still a great analyst, he's got to be pushing 80, still great, working with Kevin Brown. They look at the replay, and they go, he's safe. We're going to keep playing here. And then they go through this interminable replay. I mean, this is supposed to be something that's done in like 90 seconds tops. Now, it is the ball game, really, because it's the final out of the game. It's going to decide whether the game plays on or the game is over. But they take a long, long time. And Craig Kimbrell, the Orioles reliever, I'm concerned now that when they get the call right, because it's pretty clear to me that Adell is safe, is he going to be stiff? How ready is he going to be to face the next batter? And could we be headed to 4 extra innings here? But after deliberation, they get the call, and they go with the call on the field that Adell is out, game is over. And Kevin Brown and Palmer sort of go, okay, well, that's the way they ruled it. The Angels announcers, different story. Wayne Randazzo and Mark Gubiza.
If this call goes the way we think it should. Crowd is chanting safe.
After review, the call on the field stands. The runner is out.
That is absurd. That is absurd. That's unbelievable. That's a joke. Absolutely ridiculous. It is clear on the replay that Adell was safe, and it is a ridiculous way to end this game. That's garbage. The Baltimore Orioles end up with a 6-5 win. Could not have been any clearer on the replay that Adele hit the bag before the tag from Henderson. We'll show it again.
His foot is on the base. Foot is on the base, and then the tag.
I mean, I don't know what else you need to see there. Hits the bag, the tag not there yet.
This is unbelievable.
Well, here's what Major League Baseball said. After reviewing all the relevant angles, the replay official could not definitively determine that the runner touched second base prior to the fielder applying the tag. There it is. Ron Washington, Angels manager, said he was very surprised. Subtitles, this is ridiculous. And Mike Trout, he played it safe as well. He said, I thought he was safe, but obviously New York didn't think so. So we play on. Orioles off today. They have a 3-game series with the A's starting tomorrow night, and then a huge, huge series for early May when they will take on the New York Yankees in 4 games starting on Monday. 4 games against the Yankees, who they trail by a half game in the American League East. All right, this Topgolf thing. I think we can finally put this to rest. I think we've heard Drake Maye say, "Yeah, it was fine. I was okay with that. I'm a pretty good golfer. It's I was participating in it. It was fine. The other quarterbacks were there. So what?" But the big one has been Jayden Daniels, because Jayden Daniels is presumed to be the favorite to be the pick by the Commanders tonight. And there was some drama off of all this when Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk decided to make a big deal out of this. And Adam Schefter said, oh, yeah, there's real concern from the Daniels camp and his agent. And his agent had a chin-scratching emoji when Florio's comments were tweeted out, like, oh, there could be trouble there. And then a little bit more gasoline on the fire when Daniels told people his dream would be to reunite with Raiders coach Antonio Pierce, who was an assistant at Arizona State when he started his college career there. He'd also like to play for Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. So that ramped things up. But finally, yesterday, as Daniels arrived in Detroit for tonight's draft, he said, no, I'm 100% okay with being drafted in Washington.
It'll be fun. Be able to go there and just be blessed to really just fulfill my childhood dream, whoever that is, whatever team that is. So, I'm happy.
How about the whole idea of the group visit? Some guys said they really, really liked it. Did you get a lot out of it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just have fun. It was one of it was the only visit I went to that wasn't really, where you have to remember a play or, try to remember an install or something like that. So it was dope, and especially be with guys that I kind of knew throughout the process and before that. So it was fun.
Scale from 1 to 10, how likely are you to cry tomorrow?
I don't know. Maybe my mom cry. I don't know. We'll see. I can't even give you a number.
And I think I saw recently that you don't like mumbo sauce. Is that correct? It's like a DC sauce on wings.
No, I ain't said that. I don't remember I said that. I don't say that. I'm getting reports that I don't even know about.
Are you familiar with any DC traditions?
I'm not. Nah, I'm not. Not at all. My first time out there in the DMV was when I took the visit to Washington, so I'm not familiar with anything.
All right, so the new controversy is he doesn't like mambo sauce. Okay, we can deal with that, I think. He said the Topgolf outing was dope. I'm old, but I understand that means he liked it. He was okay with it, and we can all move on. Also, all this speculation about how this is an odd chemistry experiment that Washington was participating in, bringing in 22 prospects, including the top 4 quarterbacks. What are they doing? What's the meaning of all this? J.J. McCarthy was on the Rich Eisen show yesterday, and McCarthy could. It's still possible he could go number 2, but speculation is he will be the 4th quarterback taken. That seems to be the consensus. And he actually said in this podcast that the Giants have shown the most interest in him. Well, the Giants would have to move up to do it. So that's one to keep an eye on. But as far as he's concerned, this Topgolf thing, not a big deal at all. It was fun. And listen, as you hear the end of this is about a 1-minute soundbite here, as he gives you the reason why they did this. You know, this was not something, we're thinking outside the box. We're going radical here, seeing how they play with others. No, it's simpler than that. Apparently, these were the days that Josh Harris was available. Listen to McCarthy.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Being around the guys, the coaches, it's such a laid-back setting. And, you get to show off the golf game a little bit.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
So what is your handicap? What is it? What do you got, man?
I don't have an official one, but I'd say I'm around a 10. Yeah.
Huh. So you're at Topgolf, though, with all these guys. Was it some sort of alpha male who can drive it the longest? Something like that?
I'm not going to lie. Drake Maye and I were going back at it, just doing trying to get it over the net. That was the goal.
That was it?
Yeah.
Did we succeed?
No. With those, shafts, they're nice and flimsy, so they don't allow you to get over the top.
Blame it on the equipment. Right, I like it. I like it. Because it just from those on the outside looking in, it just felt like a unique way to take a look at prospect before the end of the journey. It was the last one, right?
Yes,
for you?
Yes. But supposedly Adam Peters was talking about this was something they did back in San Fran. So
right.
Wasn't it was unique to me and to the guys there because it's obviously, first time going through this. But it was a lot of fun. And I really liked the way, he went about that whole process because, the owner was in for 2 days and he wanted to get everyone there in those 2 days. So it was pretty special the way he handled that.
Got that? 2 days, Josh Harris available. That's why they did it all at the same time. And before you go, oh, God, this is Dan Snyder all over again, has to have his hands in everything. I don't think so. I think the way that he runs his organizations or that he hires good people and he says to Adam Peters, this is your draft. You decide who you're taking with this pick. I just want to be familiar with the process, so maybe I can ask you questions about it. But the reality is, if this is a really good draft for Adam Peters, he's going to be here for a while. If it's not a good draft and he has another draft that's next year and the year after that, he's not going to be here that long. So you hold people accountable, but you want to be as educated about the process as possible, and this is the first year that Josh Harris has owned an NFL team. It's different than the NBA. It's different than the NHL. So, I just... Let's put this to bed. Let's put Topgolf to bed, and maybe years down the road we'll look back at it and laugh or say, maybe there was something to it, that bringing in the 4 quarterbacks at once was not a good idea. As for McCarthy, and the criticism of him is that he had a system at Michigan where he didn't have to do much, that, his job was to hand off and occasionally make some throws, occasionally make some runs, but they had a great defense. They had a great running game, and he wasn't asked to do too much. And he was asked about this criticism yesterday by Eisen and said, in fact, it wasn't easy to handle this, actually using the words bitter pill.
What I was asked to do was to adapt to Coach Harbaugh's system. And it was a hard pill to swallow. I'm not going to lie to you because I know the work I put in. I know the confidence that I have in myself. But, this is a system that has worked for him ever since he got into coaching at USD. So, being able to put my personal motives aside and do what's best for the team and follow my coach's orders, because that's what we're soldiers on the football field. We follow our, top of the command and we do what they say. And, at the end of the day, having that experience where, I'm not thinking about myself, I'm thinking about we instead of me is going to just carry over so much easier to the NFL because, there is that out there, but not as much in college. And being able to have that experience in a pro-style offense, being able to understand, situation of football, how to control the game, how to win the ugly games, that's going to transition to the best because it really comes down to those 2 minutes at, the end of the game, right before half, all the little stuff that, I learned playing at University of Michigan.
When you said it was a tough pill, give me some examples. Seriously about
Penn State, the one that everyone talks about. That was a really tough pill to swallow, but going into it, it was a monumental part of the quest to where we wanted to get to. So, whatever we had to do to win is, what I'm signing up for. And Coach Moore told me in the receivers, it's going to be one of those games. And you didn't hear a peep out of us. You didn't see us, stutter at all. It was just, Roger that, let's go to work. And, I got in there a little bit with the running game and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, afterwards I asked Coach Moore, like, hey, what was it? Do you not trust me? Do you not have faith in my abilities to help play? And he said, absolutely not. I just felt this number 44, Chop Robinson, was going to tee off and have a game. So we had to adapt and, do what they have a hard time stopping, which is 9-on-7 football, and just keeping it between the tackles and just willfully moving the chains. And I totally get it with his all the pressure he was under, everything that led up to that game, with Coach Harbaugh being suspended, right when we touched down. It just at the end of the day, it was a hard pill to swallow, but we won, and that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, you got a national championship ring. Couple of other things from J.J. McCarthy yesterday. The smiley face that he writes on his passing hand every game. Plus, you may have seen him meditate before games. Here's the explanation on those two items.
My senior year of high school, it was during COVID, so, a lot of people had similar experiences, and I went through a little form of depression, straight up. And, I was sitting there on campus, miserable, not, my normal self, and I had to figure out a way to pull myself out of it. And I started looking up, great practices to improve your mental health, and meditation was the first thing that popped up. And, once I put it into practice, once I started studying it to a great extent, I started realizing the benefits, and I started understanding that, you have the ability to change your thought processes, change the way you view the world and your perspective on things. And once I started, having that awareness and growing that awareness, it just was a practice that I could never stop because of the benefits that it gave me on and off the field.
And when did you start drawing a smiley face on your hand?
That
when
was
did that happen?
Yeah, that was sophomore year of high school. It was my first loss against our arch rivals, the Marist Redhawks. And, I had a bad game, and this little girl came up to me after the game when I was signing autographs. And after I finished signing a newspaper, she was just drilling me with questions. Why were you so mad? Why'd you look like you were not having fun out there? All this good stuff. And I just told her I was playing a bad game. And then she goes like, you need to smile more, and then drew the smiley face on my hand. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty profound for a 7-year-old. And then, it's just like the nature of it, the more you enjoy something, the better you're going to perform. Whether it's here, whether it's, whatever business, whatever profession you do. So I kept it on my hand the rest of the year. We went undefeated, won the state championship. So I was like, maybe this is a little something I should keep going.
Yeah, there you are throwing it. So,
yeah.
How many games did you lose in high school, though? Just only two, right? So only one other than the one that caused her to draw a smiley face in your
Yes,
hand.
sir.
And
Well,
I know the answer to three. Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay, got it. And I know the answer to how many games you lost in college.
Yes.
Just the one.
Uno.
Yeah, well, he'll lose more than that, I'm sure, in the first month that he plays. But, okay, he does seem to have a good perspective. Last thing from McCarthy, this is advice that he got from Peyton Manning.
Respect the NFL, respect the speed, changes, respect the just immense amount of talent that's on the field every single day. But don't over-respect it. He got in trouble speeding up his footwork and trying to make decisions too quick and not being patient enough. Understand, C.J. Stroud, perfect example. He was that great balance of respecting but not over-respecting. So that was something that was huge because going into it, I'm already over-respecting everyone on that field, whether it's at practice or on game day.
Who knows if J.J. McCarthy's going to be a future star, but guy knows how to do an interview, doesn't he? He's pretty good. And that's what you heard, that the one-on-ones that teams had with him, they were blown away. He's really good at talking. Whether he's good at playing, that remains to be seen, at least in the NFL. College, of course, has been. Now, as far as drafting this franchise quarterback, Sam Fortier's got a story in the Post today where he quotes Bill Polian. And Bill Polian, he knew how to pick a quarterback, right? Well, not that it was, much decision there on Peyton Manning, but there were those who said, take Ryan Leaf. So he's he took Jim Kelly when he was in Buffalo, so he knows about picking quarterbacks, and he's now on Sirius XM radio, and 48 talked to him about this. Now, his son, Chris, is director of pro personnel for the Commanders, if you didn't know that. He says he has not discussed the Commanders draft with him. But here's what he says about drafting a franchise quarterback. He says it doesn't have to be the second coming of Peyton Manning. He doesn't have to be an all-pro even. He has to be a guy who can help you win the National Football League when surrounded by other players and a program. That's the charge. A home run in this pick, that's myopic. I don't say that in a denigrating way. I recognize the role of the media, but the correct way to approach things is to build the best football team you can, execute the plan the coaches and the GMs have decided on, and as Hall of Fame coach Bill Walsh used to say, the score will take care of itself. Of course, this is the same Bill Polian who said that Lamar Jackson was a little bit small to play quarterback in the NFL, and he's 6'3", and that maybe he would project better as a wide receiver. So, he had some takes that were wrong, but you got to look at the success he had with the 4 teams that he took to Super Bowls and the one that won with the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, we'll get to more Draft Yak. Matt Miller is one of the analysts on ESPN along with Mel, and we're going to play the Mel conversation coming up in the 10 o'clock hour, plus Drake Maye, who remains a possibility to be drafted by the Commanders tonight, talks about his size and his outlook heading into the draft tonight. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Woohoo! Draft day finally here. Actually, now draft night as festivities get underway at 8 o'clock in Detroit. There's a lot of talk about this draft for Washington for obvious reasons, that they're picking number 2, that they have 9 picks and 6 of them in the first 100 picks, that you won't necessarily build a championship team in 1 year with this draft, but you can lay the foundation for it. And if you look at the last 4 drafts under Ron Rivera, really no impact players out of it. They got some starters, but nothing really. You look like Jahan Dotson might be an impact player, but he had an off year last year, and we don't know if that's going to be more representative of the rest of his career or the first year that he played. But you can really set the foundation for a team in one draft. And the Redskins did it in 1981. This is one of the great drafts of all time. They took Mark May with their first-round pick. They had rarely used a first-rounder before that because you had the George Allen decade where he's trading everything away. But they used the 20th pick overall. It wasn't, top 5 or anything, but Mark May was the Outland Trophy winner at Pittsburgh. Made sense, needed an offensive tackle, thought he'd be the left tackle, and they took him there at 20. Then in the 3rd round, all the way down to the 3rd round, they took his teammate who had played center at Pitt but moved to guard with the Redskins, Russ Grimm, who, is in the Hall of Fame. They took in the 4th round Tom Flick, hung around the league a little bit as a backup quarterback, no impact there. 5th round, they get Dexter Manley out of Oklahoma State. Took Gary Sayer and Larry Kubin after that, 5th round and 6th round, although Kubin was a good special teamer for a few years here. In the 8th round, they got Charlie Brown out of an HBCU, South Carolina State, and was a terrific player and a key player in that first Super Bowl victory in 1983. They got Darrell Grant in the 9th round as a defensive tackle out of Rice. Well, he became a defensive tackle, but he was drafted as an offensive lineman. They moved him to tackle, and he was a mainstay for over a decade on 3 Super Bowl teams, 2 Super Bowl winners. And then in the 12th round, all the way down in the 12th round, they got Clint Didier, who was a wide receiver at Portland State. Portland State had a quarterback named Neil Lomax, who was drafted, might have been the number 1 pick or one of the top picks that year in 1981. And Bobby Beathard, the GM, went out to scout him, and on pro day, I didn't call it that, but the workout day, whatever it was, he was thrown to this wide receiver named Clint Didier, and Beathard got in his mind, hey, I think I can make him into a tight end. Took him in the 12th round, and he was a big part of 2 Super Bowl teams as well, the 2 Super Bowl winners in 1983 and 1988. So you can do that with one draft, and they did it. Oh, and on top of that, they had Joe Jacoby as a free agent, undrafted free agent, believe it or not. They thought he was too big to play, and he should be in the Hall of Fame as well, along with his good buddy Russ Grimm. But you can do that, and can they do that tonight? We'll have to see. But the quarterbacks are the issue as we head into it. Matt Miller, who works alongside Mel Kiper at ESPN on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday, analyzing the available QBs.
Caleb Williams is far and away the best, and I think he's in a tier by himself. Jayden Daniels has separated himself over the last year, certainly, but definitely over the past few months, I think, as well. And then you have Drake Maye, who some people like a lot. J.J. McCarthy, again, who some people really, really like. But I do think that they are much closer now than they were 4 months ago. You know, like the last time we saw these guys play football, they were not very closely ranked. What happens over the course of the process is guys interview well. J.J. McCarthy's pro day was one of the best pro days that a quarterback has had in a couple processes and in the interview process. Also, teams fall in love with these guys, and that overinflates their stock a little bit. I think that's what we're seeing. If 4 of these quarterbacks go in the top 6 tomorrow night, and I think they will, then we're looking at another draft in which teams have fallen in love because we're in this model of you go up and get your guy or you wait for the next year. The second round quarterback kind of dead. Like the developmental quarterback is dead. You either get a top 10 pick or sometimes you get lucky with a Brock Purdy.
Where's the draft start?
I think it starts at 3. Caleb Williams is going to go first. That is the worst kept secret in the world right now. I feel very strongly Jayden Daniels goes number 2, but I think there is room. I don't know if they're top golfing in Detroit today, that maybe we can figure out exactly who's going to go number 2, but I feel good about Jayden Daniels going 2. I think they've smoothed over their differences. 3 is where it starts because New England could certainly stick and pick. They could take Drake Maye. They could run it back with another Michigan quarterback. Jim Harbaugh says Jay McCarthy is the greatest Michigan quarterback of all time. If you believe that, then you have to take him over Tom Brady. But I think 3 is where it starts because they could take one of those guys. They could do the kind of crazy thing and take Marvin Harrison Jr., who is, for a lot of people, the best player in this draft, or they could trade back. And I think all those scenarios are certainly on the table. The hard thing with New England is we don't know who's really running the show there. Is it Jonathan Kraft? Is it Gerard Mayo? Is it Elliott Wolf? Is it kind of a consortium of people who are calling the shots there? So it makes it difficult to try to even know who to call and also to predict based on, maybe what they've done historically.
I don't know if somebody's asked Jim Harbaugh this, but I would say, Jim, you love J.J. McCarthy. You really love him. Well, why don't you trade Justin Herbert, and then you'll get J.J. McCarthy on his rookie deal, and wouldn't that be better suited for building this team? How do you think he would answer that question?
I don't think he would. I think we would get I'm sure you remember San Francisco 49ers era Jim Harbaugh was a lot different than Michigan era Jim Harbaugh. You would get the most sarcastic answer after he stared and blinked at you for several seconds, making you feel like you're the dumbest person on earth. He's really calmed down in his old age. So I don't think you would answer, but that is a fair question. Hey, if McCarthy's this good, why not trade Herbert? And I'm sure his answer would be, some type of PR spin of, he's the best in this draft, but Justin would be, the number 1 guy if he were in it. But I know there, early on, those conspiracy theories definitely existed.
It's not insane, but dealing the Herbert contract would be tough. He's a franchise guy, no question. He's proved himself, but it's a big number. And, what are you going to get in return for him? Are you going to get the ability to take J.J. McCarthy? And as you start out now in the NFL, the second go round, do you want to lay it all at the feet? Because the pressure on both of them would be enormous. So I don't see that happening. But it is fun speculation, and we got some hours to kill until the draft, so why not some more fun speculation? As for what the Commanders are going to do, it does appear that they are going to take Jayden Daniels, but there are some who still believe it's going to be Drake Maye. The advantage would be his size, which is where they started when Dan Patrick talked to him yesterday.
6'4.5", 225 right now. Probably close to 220, 230 when I get closer to the season, but 225 right now.
Best athlete in the family?
My mom.
Your mom?
My mom. Yes, sir. Yeah, she was a great athlete in high school. She doesn't show as much now, but she grabbed some clubs and played 9 holes. She doesn't play 18, but she grabbed some clubs. She'll still beat us brothers. So it's pretty sad. But
how about it with you and your brothers? Best athlete amongst the 3?
Yeah, myself. I think it's a pretty easy answer. They're good athletes though, but I'll take myself.
All right. What's the best thing that's happened through this whole process so far?
The best thing that's happened. I think a chance to reflect on my college years and how many different people kind of poured into my life, and being a chance to reflect and see how many special people were in my life and made this moment special. And to be here on Thursday with all my family and all my brothers coming into one place and all my friends and family to enjoy one moment, kind of to reflect on that and you always dream of this, and kind of coming to it and realizing that it's about to happen is pretty cool.
What team did you grow up liking?
Oh, Panthers fan, huge Panthers fan. We had season tickets, and when Cam Newton came, and those, it was the best thing ever. So we were big Panthers fans.
Have you met Cam?
I have. I played him in 7-on-7. He coached a 7-on-7 team, and we played him, growing up, and he has a good squad.
He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's huge. Yeah, I'm about 6'4" and a half, 6'5", and he's about like 2 inches taller than me, probably like 30 pounds on me. So he's a big dude.
As far as other teams that you visit, give me something interesting that you've been asked.
Interesting I've been asked. It's a good question. Probably the most interesting thing I've been asked is kind of why me. I think that's always the most interesting. They always start with that and say, "Hey, why should we draft you?" And I think it's one of those questions that, hey, kind of puts you on the spot, but I think kind of ready for it. So just ready to be kind of be the guy and ready to kind of translate my game in the NFL. So I'll fit the NFL game a little more, and I'm excited for that.
Okay, but when they say why you, do they want to know if you want to start? Like, is that part of this too? That, hey, I want to come in and start, or
yeah.
That we'd prefer somebody come in and want to learn.
Exactly. That's why it's tricky. You kind of have to play it both ways, because obviously, the competitor in me, you want to go in there and start right away and be the game one guy and the day one starter. But at the same time, that's not reality. You got to be ready forever. So I'm just kind of ready to compete, like I'm going to be the starter, and up to their decision. But I'm going to try to prove them that I'm ready to be the starter. Other than that, ready to learn and wait until I earn that job.
What's it like to read the negative reviews?
Yeah, try not to. I think that's the biggest fault of athletes in our space, especially how big social media is nowadays. So many fans out there that don't like you, and there's even more that are a fan of you. So try to enjoy the positives, and unless it's my coach or one of my family members or somebody in my inner circle, saying something negative about me or something I need to change, then that's that's a different subject than Joe Smo works at Applebee's or something.
But do your brothers look for the negative stuff just to give you grief, to say, like, if you were my brother, I'd be trying to find some things to needle you a little bit. Would your brothers stoop to that level?
No, if it got real personal, they would. But I think my brothers have been three of my biggest supporters. So I think kind of once you get to this stage in the NFL, there's so many people out there that aren't fans of you and saying negative stuff. So I think if your brothers, I think at a certain point, maybe in high school sports, you get on for something, but kind of on this stage, I think it's a little bit past that.
Favorite quarterback when you were growing up?
Favorite quarterback, Cam Newton was my first one, being a big Panthers fan. Other than that, Aaron Rodgers. I was a big Aaron Rodgers fan.
Have you met Rodgers?
I have not. Nope, I have not.
Okay, let's go around the room. Has Drake met Michael Jordan? Todd, I'll start with you.
I'm going to say no.
Seton.
I got a no on that one.
Marvin.
Yes.
Paulie.
Drake played basketball. He's been in his presence before, Michael Jordan's presence.
And his brother played on a national title team.
Yes. Yes-ish.
North Carolina. I'm going to say yes, you've met Michael Jordan.
I have met MJ.
All
yes,
right.
Sir. Yeah,
all right.
It's pretty cool.
MJ.
So.
Oh, it's MJ. Okay.
If you call him your GOAT, he's got to be MJ, right? You don't call him Michael Jordan. You call him the GOAT MJ. So,
what'd you talk about?
I met him at the halftime of one of the basketball games when I was getting recruited. Coach Brown, brought me down there and had me meet MJ, and it was pretty sweet.
That's nice. That's a part of your NIL package. You get to meet Michael Jordan.
Yeah. No, that was in high school. That was in high school before I even committed. So I was committed to Alabama at the time. So getting to meet him was pretty sweet.
Okay. What's that conversation like when you call Saban and you say, Coach, I'm not coming to Alabama?
Yeah, it was tough. Yeah, I dreaded it for a while. Being with Coach Saban, he was one of my favorites in the recruiting process. So having to tell him that I'm going to stay home was tough. But I think Coach Saban understood, and maybe would have worked out a little differently, but at the same time, Coach Saban, I think he's the GOAT of college football. So
he did okay. He did okay.
Yeah, he turned out all right.
Draft night suit, you already got it picked out?
Yeah, I'm simple, no swag, so I'm just keep it simple.
Okay, is there a light blue? Is there a Carolina blue in the suit?
I don't know. I think you'll have to find out.
Oh, okay. Because you might do like a New York Giants blue. Or
yeah, that's a little too royal, closer to Duke. I can't wear nothing. It's got blue if I was to wear blue at all. No.
Or you could have like Patriot blue in there.
Yeah, that's that navy. So if I'd wear any blue, it'd be Carolina.
Do you know where you're going?
I wish I did, and I wish it was that easy. No, I think I'll know once I hear that phone ring.
But do you have an idea? You don't have to tell me, but do you have an idea?
I think I have an idea.
Okay. All right. And do you like the cold?
I don't mind it at all.
Okay.
You got to play football. Football's a cold weather sport nowadays.
All right. I just want to make sure. Do you plan on hugging the commissioner, or are you going to give like just a firm handshake?
I hadn't thought about that one. Hugging him. Ooh, I'm.
You don't strike me as a hugger. You did.
Yeah.
Like
maybe like a dap and a one arm around. Maybe,
Okay.
not really a hug, a 2-arm hug. It doesn't seem like me.
But don't treat him like your mom when you come home.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
No.
that when I see the draft guys do that, and they pick him up, and we don't need that.
Yeah, that'd be funny. Some of those guys do. I think it's pretty cool though. Some of the big D linemen or offensive linemen, I think that fits.
Yeah, well, it doesn't fit really. I would disagree with that. I think it's stupid. I think it makes Goodell look really stupid. It's a dumb idea that they ought to get rid of because these are players that somewhere down the line he might have to discipline, and it creates a tension for Goodell, which he likes, but it looks dumb. Yeah, act professional. Shake his hand. Congratulations, you're in the NFL. Move on. But that's just my field. Anyway, that's Drake Maye. He could wind up here. The speculation seems to be that he's going to wind up in New England or someplace else if another team can move up as high as 3 to get him tonight. But I am comfortable with the idea that they're going to take Daniels. Maye, the only thing I can think of with Maye is that you have Marcus Mariota here. Mariota started 12 games for Atlanta 2 years ago. If you want to bring him along slowly, which he says he's comfortable with, might be the way to go. If you think you can develop him on the bench for a year or maybe even 2 years, then do it. But if you're looking for somebody who can be an impact player right away, you're probably going to go with Daniels. And the other thing I hear about Daniels, and again, I don't know anything. I just listen and read and hear what people are saying. But Dan Quinn, as a defensive guy, has said that those type of quarterbacks are the toughest to defend against. So he might be leaning in that direction. Cliff Kingsbury would seem to have more interest in a quarterback who's fast, and Daniels is the fastest, and said, and we'll hear what Tony and Mike said about this last night on PTI, said he'd like to go down as the greatest running quarterback in NFL history. I don't think that's such a great idea, but that's part of his motivation as well. Okay, coming up in the next hour, we'll talk more, of course, about the draft. And Mel Kiper Jr., the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, I've pulled the second part of it where he looks at the players tonight, not just in the first round that the Commanders and others will be taking, but what will happen in the weekend where we get into the rounds where they've got to add some depth on the offensive line, in the secondary. And by the way, Jamin Davis, it was revealed today, Nikki Juvala reported this, that the Commanders will not be picking up the fifth-year option on his contract. That's another first-round pick from the Rivera era, and don't be surprised if they take a linebacker somewhere along the way this weekend. All that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Round and round we go for the final time this year on who the Commanders are going to be taking at number 2 tonight in the NFL draft. By this time tomorrow, we'll be talking about who they took rather than who they're going to take, but the obsession will continue for a number of hours throughout the day. It seems to be fairly certain that they're going to take Jayden Daniels, but it could be Drake Maye, it could be J.J. McCarthy. There is a slight chance that they would trade out of the number 2 pick, though Adam Peters, the GM, says that's probably not going to happen. But the build-up to this is just unreal. And there's just more air wasted, just blah, blah, blah. Who's it going to be? And we will find out for sure tonight. Now, as far as trades go, the story in the Associated Press today about first-round trades and how relatively rare they are, but they do happen. And over the past 5 drafts, there have been 28 trades during the first day of the draft. So that's a little over 5 trades per first round, which I guess would be pretty significant. 5 of those deals involve picks in the top 10. 3 of those 5 draft day trades involved top 10 picks from last season, with Arizona Cardinals general manager making 2 of them. The Cardinals traded down from number 3 to number 12 to let Houston take eventual Defensive Rookie of the Year, Will Anderson Jr. Arizona then moved back up to number 6 to take tackle Paris Johnson. There were 6 trades during last year's opening night of the draft involving first-rounders, with Jacksonville also making 2. The Jags moved down from number 24 to 27 in a pair of deals that got them picks in the 4th, 5th, and 7th rounds, and that's how you build your football team. Draft capital. You're going to miss on some, so you use many of those picks to bring in guys who you may or may not keep. You also have the ability to move up and down with extra picks. They asked the question, while trading first-round picks during the draft is common, giving up a first-round pick before the season that turned out to be the number 1 overall pick is quite rare. So we haven't seen this, I guess, on draft day happen, that the number 1 pick is traded. So Chicago, you can be pretty certain, is going to take Caleb Williams at number 1. But the last time it happened before Carolina's trade with Chicago, and that was last year going into the draft. So the deal was made where the Bears had given up the first-round pick, and that went to Carolina, and they took Bryce Young, and C.J. Stroud turned out to be the right pick as it went to Houston at number 2. But the last time it happened before Carolina's trade with Chicago was in 1983 when Cincinnati dealt quarterback Jack Thompson to Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers went 2-14 in 83 and had to send the top pick of the 84 draft to Cincinnati. The Bengals then traded that pick to New England. The Patriots drafted Irving Fryer, number 1. Irving Fryer finished his career here in Washington. In 84, there were no quarterbacks taken in the first round. How about that? I don't think that'll ever happen again. But Boomer Esiason of Maryland was the first quarterback taken, and he was taken in the second round by Cincinnati. Same thing happened 5 years earlier when San Francisco traded the pick that turned out to be the number 1 overall for O.J. Simpson. That's how poorly the 49ers were run in those days, by the way, that an over-the-hill, beat-up O.J. Simpson went to San Francisco for a first-round pick that became the number 1 pick of the draft. However, Buffalo frittered that. They picked Tom Cousineau, who didn't sign with Buffalo and went to play in Canada and then was later traded to Cleveland when he played in the NFL. So, I guess it was bad for both teams. O.J. wasn't much in San Francisco, and the Bills wound up with a pick who really never played for them. This could be the 3rd time in the common draft era that started in 1967 that no running back is picked in the first round. It is also happening in 2022 and 2014. The high for running backs came in 71 when 8 of the 26 first-round picks were used for that position. The game has changed, obviously, so the value of running backs is down significantly. Offensive players. The record of 19 offensive players taken in the first round could fall this year. The over-under is 21.5. There were 19 taken in 2009, 2004, and 1968. Way back in 1968, which I think may have been the first common draft, the first right after the merger. May have been 67, but 68 was one of the early years. This would also be the 8th time in the common draft era that 2 Heisman Trophy winners were selected in the same draft. Last time it happened 2018 when Baker Mayfield went first to Cleveland and the 2016 winner Lamar Jackson went 32nd to Baltimore. There has been only 1 year when 2 Heisman winners went in the top 5 of the same draft, 2013 winner Jameis Winston and 2014 winner Marcus Mariota being taken in the top 2 picks in 2015. The other years in the common draft with 2 Heisman winners, 2011 Cam Newton and Mark Ingram, 2010 Sam Bradford and Tim Tebow. Tebow was the first-round pick. 92, Desmond Howard and Ty Detmer. Neither one much. 1985, Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie. And 1980, Billy Sims and Charles White. By the way, Herschel in 1985, he was taken in the 5th round. Heisman Trophy winner, taken in the 5th round. Why? He was playing in the USFL. But Gil Brandt was a really savvy GM, and he thought the USFL might fold, which it did. They held his rights. They signed Herschel Walker. Then they traded Herschel Walker for a bushel of draft picks, which became the foundation of those 3 Super Bowl teams that Jerry Jones had early in his ownership. So we will see what unfolds tonight. But right now, as of now, Adam Peters, the GM of the Commanders, says he is sticking at number 2 and will not trade the pick. And the betting favorite is Jayden Daniels. Now, yesterday on PTI, Tony and Mike, and I did this yesterday on the show here, but this is similar to what I said yesterday about this comment that Daniels made to CBS Sports that he wants to become the greatest running quarterback of all time. He didn't say he wanted to be the best quarterback of all time. He said he wants to be the best running quarterback of all time. And the take from Tony and Mike, again, similar to what I said yesterday.
Wilbon, is that something the team that drafts Daniels should want?
No, Tony, probably not. And I look, Baltimore is still figuring out how to balance Lamar Jackson's heroic running with staying in the pocket and getting it done from there. And, oh, wait, Lamar Jackson's never been to this one thing that he wants to go to more than anything else, which is a Super Bowl. Yeah. All right? And Michael Vick never got close. So what's the goal? Is the goal to show your bag, which is all kids talk about now? His bag is deep. To hell with your bag. Do you want to win the games? Do you want to win in this league? Do you want to win at the highest level? Do you want to get to and win a Super Bowl? And Tony, I don't want to hold him too responsible for this because good coaching can bring the best out and suppress these other instincts. When people are guys of that age with his physical talents, they all want to show it off, right? They all want to show you how deep their bag is. It's up to a great coaching staff, if he can join a team that has that, to say, hold on, Junior, we're going a different direction.
Yeah, I'm not much for bags. I don't know how that works, but I will say this, that Daniels, a lot of people think he's going to go at number 2 to Washington. And I live in Washington, and you occasionally live in Washington as well. And so I would say in the abstract, wanting to be the greatest running quarterback ever is fine. But, you know, I mean, this is, you look at Lamar Jackson. A great running quarterback can influence a game. He's probably won more games with his legs than with his arm to this point. But this isn't college anymore. This isn't where this kid Daniels can go over 1,100 yards last year, I believe, at LSU. The defenders, as people find out, are bigger and stronger and faster. And sometimes when they hit you, you stay hit. So for people in Washington, I have 4 words for you.
Ooh, I know what
Robert
this is.
Griffin the third.
Yeah.
Okay, because his career was ended because of running. I want my quarterback to have an instinct for running. I don't want him to say, I want to be the greatest runner of all time.
No, you don't.
If you want to do that, be a running back. You know, use discretion. Do what Mahomes does, what Dak Prescott does,
coached.
what Joe Burrow does.
Coaching.
Take it when it's available.
Gotta be coached.
But don't. Oh.
I'll also say this about RG3. He had that knee injury that he suffered during the regular season against Baltimore. He was so insecure about Kirk Cousins that he insisted on playing. And he was playing with a compromised knee in those last 2 regular season games, including the one that clinched the division last game of the season against Dallas. But it was Alfred Morris, who ran for 200 yards, that really made the difference in that game. Then his knee blew out against Seattle. Again, his fault. Insisted on staying in the game. There was some audio that was picked up on the sidelines of him telling Trent Williams, I hurt my knee, but don't tell anybody. And then finally, the knee just exploded at the end of the game. And it was more his attitude, like, okay, I've done this, I got hurt, now I'm going to be Aaron Rodgers. And he never did really learn how to protect himself. When he went to Cleveland, one of the first games of the year, if not the first game, he broke his shoulder because he used to do this thing where he'd stand on the sideline with a play waiting for a late hit. You know, so it wasn't all injury. It was injury combined with knuckleheadedness, and it didn't work out. And to Griffin's credit, in a recent interview, he said, you know, just because what happened to me in Washington, he's not taking any blame for it, which he should, but just because of what happened to me in Washington doesn't mean that Jayden Daniels can't succeed there. So I give him some credit for that. Now, here's another angle on this whole quarterback thing. Yeah, you want to get the right one, but it's not necessarily what you get at the beginning. It's the step up that those quarterbacks make. And as successful as Patrick Mahomes had been heading into this past season, where he'd already won a Super Bowl and been to another, this is Charles Davis, who was on with Rich Eisen yesterday, talking about the step up that Mahomes made, not necessarily with his physical talent, but with his ability to play the position. So, you know, great physical traits that, apparently Caleb Williams has that are similar to Mahomes, and Jayden Daniels with the speed that he has, those things that match up with Mahomes. Yeah, that's all part of it. But this is a very good explanation from Charles Davis on how you have to take it to the next level, which Mahomes was able to do last year.
Last year?
Yes.
He went to Apex Predator as a quarterback in my mind because last year's team was not the swashbuckling Chiefs. Last year's team was, I'll be darned, my defense is not built to play with a 14-0 lead. My defense is built to play.
Right.
Oh, we can turn and hand it off to Pacheco, and Andy Reid kept calling running plays. I don't have the big threat out wide, so I play small ball. Maybe I should take a sack here instead of playing hero because my defense will pick me up because he figured it out. To me, all the records, all the great play, all that is phenomenal. But watching him grow as a quarterback over the last 6 games, the playoffs, and ascend to that level, what does my team need from me this week to win? Not to pad my stats. That's why I said he went to Apex Predator as a quarterback. That's why he went to the legendary status, even though he's still playing, because that's how the greats do it.
And it's amazing that here we are at this draft, Charles Davis, NFL Network, CBS, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. It's amazing we're at this draft, and we're looking at Caleb Williams' wow plays as the next Mahomes, and you just described how Mahomes has taken his game to a whole other level of not either having the guys to give him the wow plays,
right,
or swallowing your pride, if that's such a thing, because of the wow plays. We're seeing that. We're also seeing potentially 3 quarterbacks going to start in a row. Last time that happened, 2 of the 3, as of right now, are now on other teams. The 2 taken after them are on other teams. We might see 5 in the first half of a draft anyway in this draft. Also, deep at wide receiver. Here we are the day before the draft, and the most well-paid wide receiver in the NFL as of this morning is a 4th-round, 112th overall selection in Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's wild how things develop in the NFL, and yet we're still drafting the same way. You got to take these guys at the top because they could be the next such and such and such and such, and it'll never change.
No,
right?
it won't change. And Rich, our colleague Bucky Brooks, former NFL scout, he has said to us, and I listen to these guys, I listen to him, I listen to Daniel Jeremiah, I listen to all these guys who've done it and been there. You grade the flashes. Remember, you've heard that from him before. Well, those flashes of all these players we're talking about are really bright. What determines whether you're going to be the great pro and a continued long-term pro is what you're doing when it's not the flash time. Right? How many times we had a coach talk about a great offensive player in the NFL? He does so many things without the ball that help us. And after a while, you roll your eyes like, oh, what are you talking about? Well, they do the decoy, right? They block. Right? They run the route to keep someone open. They do the fake thing that now the ball goes somewhere else, and they make it all happen. They rally their team on the sidelines and in the locker room. They keep their mouth shut when the adversity hits and only talk when it's supposed. Those are the guys that sustain. The flashes are going to happen because these guys are super talented. But are you going to be able to do all the other things that allow the flashes to occur, and you do the other things that help make your team win ball games? That's why I went back to Mahomes on that. To be able to say to yourself at this stage of his career, wow, I might not throw for 5,000 yards this year, but I'm going to win 2 straight rings and make it happen and work with your coach. Look, Andy Reid evolved. How many times do you think Andy was always throw it, we'll run it late? Not anymore because his team wasn't built for it. And he had a 7th-round running back who was a bowling ball with knives. Right. And you had to hand it to him. And Andy did it and did it and did it. I thought he evolved as a head coach last year.
Evolved. He's 66 now. He's just a few years younger than Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick, who have been deemed to be, I guess, over the hill because neither one of them get a job here, get a job in this offseason. But he's telling you he's evolved. And I think the important point he makes about Mahomes is he's evolving as a quarterback because – and this would be something to watch with Lamar Jackson. I think he's getting better at it, but you have to understand, preserve yourself over a 17-game schedule, which is going to be 18, that you just can't do things that you did when you came in the league. And I think this is what will happen with Jayden Daniels, assuming he's taken by Washington or wherever he goes. he'll be relying on running a lot more early in his career. But as things progress, if he wants to hang around for a while and if he wants to be there at the end of seasons, which Lamar was not able to do in the previous 2 seasons to this, you got to learn to play the position like Charles Davis says he did. And Andy Reid evolving at my age, his age, my age, we're the same age. Kind of like that. That's cool. All right, coming up, we're going to hear from Mel Kiper Jr. or rehear from Mel, depending on whether or not you heard our conversation from a couple of weeks ago. This is not just what the Commanders will do tonight, but will do over the next couple of nights or a couple of days as they start to fill out the roster with 9 draft picks this time. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Mike Cal is in for Tony coming up at 11 o'clock. We'll also look back 50 years ago today when the NFL put in instant replay for the regular season. Now, we'd had it in use for the 1958 championship game between the Colts and the Giants, but it had not been used in the regular season. In fact, in 1967, the Redskins had 3 overtime games in a 14-game season. 3 of the 14 went to ties, no overtime, ties in 67. Not until this day, 1974, did the NFL institute sudden death for games that were tied at the end of regulation. Okay, and we'll get to that shortly. If you missed my conversation with Mel Kiper Jr. a couple of weeks ago, we played part 1 of it yesterday. This is part 2, where we get into the quarterbacks who will be taken tonight, and beyond that, what the Commanders are going to do both Friday night and Saturday. Here's Mel Kiper Jr. from a couple of weeks ago.
You got 2 quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, who was phenomenal in 2022, great early in 2023 until he hit some struggles, right, because he didn't have Jordan Addison and had a horrible offensive line in front of him. So he had all those great moments, right? Mm-hmm. You think about, Jayden Daniels, good in 2022, great, phenomenal in 2023. Drake Maye this past year in 4 games late in the year was off his game. He was like the pitcher who just didn't have his good stuff. Right. And then you go to JJ. We talk about JJ never having to carry a team. Both those kids, by the way, JJ and Drake are 21. Caleb's 22 and right now, and then you look at Jayden is 23, right? Bo Nix is 24. Michael Penix Jr. soon to be 24. So the young guns are J.J. McCarthy and Drake Maye. But Drake and J.J. didn't show that they were that guy this year. I kept waiting for JJ to do it, but he never was forced to carry that team. And Drake had those struggles. Even against Virginia, Andy, he was off the mark. Mm-hmm. NC State, Miami, Clemson. So, again, I think the 2 quarterbacks that played the best and have the most talent are those 2, Caleb and then Jayden. Then Drake has a ton of talent. Jake just needs a year. And I said this, Andy, a long time ago, and Susie Colbert, good friend of all ours, right? Yep. Susie used to say, Mel, you're crazy. It's never happening. Don't even talk about sit, watch, and learn anymore. These guys are playing. Susie was right. Most of these quarterbacks, the best laid plans go awry because they play right away, right? But in the case of Drake Maye and J.J. McCarthy, they really do need to sit, watch, and learn. Whether they will or not, I don't know, but they do need that 1 year to settle into the NFL.
All right, and I agree that Jayden Daniels will go number 2. I believe in your analysis and other people that I've heard talk about this. But let me just give you a little devil's advocate here on May if they like him. They signed Marcus Mariota. Mariota started 12 games just 2 years ago for the Atlanta Falcons. Also, you got a team that the owner went through the process with his other franchise, the Philadelphia 76ers, a fan base which, if you have an 8-win season, there's cause for celebration. This is a little different situation. I mean, could you see a developmental quarterback coming in here and actually would sit for a year or most of a year while a guy like Mariota plays?
Andy, I never think I have all the answers. I really, nobody's telling anybody who they're saying. That's why we hear Drake Maye. I heard the other day, different people, Jason LaConforna, does radio here, covered the NFL all those years. Others think that, I know Matt Miller, a good friend of ours, works at ESPN, does a great job. He'll be on day 3 with me again this year. Matt does phenomenal work with the NFL draft. Matt's been told by numerous people it's going to be J.J. McCarthy at 2. So, you hear all this, Andy. That's why I don't know. I'm going why Jayden, because that's what I think will happen. Nobody's told me that, right? But you hear other people saying J.J. and Drake. Remember when Baker Mayfield went number 1? I remember I told this story. I walked down. That's why I'm not doing a mock the morning of the draft. It destroys me for the whole day. And I'm never doing that again. Last year I was up till 3 in the morning. Who cares, right? At the end of the day, it's ridiculous nonsense is what it is. Bottom line is, Andy, that year, I think I got it right. I'm putting Josh Allen number 1 to Cleveland. Everything's going to fall. I come down to breakfast the draft day morning. My mock's up on ESPN.com, and they informed me. I remember seeing Adam Schefter as soon as I got out of the elevator. I'm taking Baker Mayfield. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I got on ESPN.com right now. Kiper's final mock has Josh Allen going to the Cleveland Browns. Now you're telling me Baker Mayfield. And it turned out to be, I would have never, Andy, if we'd have talked an hour before that, well, then I knew, but a day before that draft, and you said, I don't say it, former walk-on, kind of an overachiever. I like Baker, but go ahead at Josh Allen, who's got everything. So you couldn't have convinced me, Andy, that was going to happen, even though some people knew it was going to happen. So, again, I never say never to anything because I don't know who they're taking, but I would be really surprised if it wasn't Jayden Daniels.
And some might say they should have listened to Mel and taken Josh Allen, but it's also where you go. Winding up in Cleveland may be a little bit different than winding up in Buffalo, which is
I always say, what would happen to Dan Marino if he was going to the middle of the first round of the Detroit Lions instead of James Jones, a fullback out of Florida?
Yeah.
He went to Don Shula and the Dolphins. So you're right, Andy. Where you go a lot of times determines your fate.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's talk about why you think Jayden Daniels will be a good fit. We talked on the phone last week, and I mentioned a story that was in the Post about quarterbacks his size. They tend to get hurt. Robert Griffin III being one of them. You say the sample size is too small. 210 is, you think, a good weight for him, and you believe that he can be, successful at that level at his size?
He used to be probably 170 when he was with Herm Edwards at Arizona State. I mean, He was thin, skinny, and he put weight on gradually. That's why when I talked to his mom, Regina, during the summer leading up to the year when he was deciding to come out or stay, I said, that whole off season there, I said, you got to go back. Jayden needs to go back to LSU for that second year. Joe Burrow came into his own, really hit his stride that second year at LSU after coming from Ohio State. I said he's going to have the receivers. He could do a lot of great things, and she made that decision with Jayden to go back to LSU, and it worked out to go from a 4th-round pick, which is where he would have been when he was making that decision, to the number 2 pick overall. Is amazing, Andy. But no, I think the sample size is small. Alex Smith had played and of course had that injury. Remember Joe Theismann had that awful injury. Those things happen, unfortunately, in football, but I think Jayden's now put some weight on. He can evade, elude. He's got to get a little smarter, as they all do. Remember Josh Allen was taking hits. He still does. We say, Josh, but Josh is 240 pounds, 6'5". I get that, but Josh still had to learn how to get out of bounds. And I'll tell you what, I think he will learn that, and I don't think that's a major concern right now.
And as I tell people getting into this end of the business, the key to interviewing is listening. And I was listening when Mel said that Jayden Daniels' mother called him last year about the draft. So my follow-up question to that is that common? Do prospects' parents call you prior to drafts, or whether they should come out or stay in?
I'll tell you, Andy, sometimes the players do. I talked to Keyshawn Johnson when he was coming out. Key called me. He said, Mel, where you got me? What should I do? I said, Key, I got you in the middle of the first round, maybe as high as 10, whatever. He said, Mel, I got to go. I got to be number 1. I said, well, Key, then you got to go back. He went back to being the number 1 pick. I talked to Simeon Rice. When Simeon came out, he wanted to be a top guy. He went back and became a top 5 guy, right? So sometimes players do call you, but in cases of parents and brothers and friends, sure, you get those calls. And I talked to Regina Daniels. Regina was great to talk to. She's a great mom to Jayden, and she asked. I'll tell you what, Andy, she asked all the right questions, and she did her due diligence. And I was on the phone for Regina for hours, and she finally got all the information. And that was before the draft. Said, okay, you got to go back. You're going to be a 3rd, 4th round pick, and 3rd was being generous. I thought more 4th round, and I told her all the things that could possibly happen. And luckily, they fell into place. He won the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award, Heisman Trophy. He's going to be the number 2 pick possibly, and it worked out beautifully. And he had a great year at LSU. And by the way, in the 4th quarter, 10 touchdowns, 2 picks, 73% with 3 rushing touchdowns. At 13 touchdowns, 2 picks, 73%. He needed to do well in the 4th quarter because his defense at LSU was awful.
Yeah, and that was the case, obviously, with Caleb Williams, who you still have going number 1. And what I was thinking about, the first draft that I covered was 1990. And it was at the old Marriott Marquis, and I remember walking in. And
that was Steve Emptman, wasn't it?
No, that was Jeff George, right?
Was this Steve Empton in 1990? I don't remember.
I thought he was 91, but I thought it was
maybe 90. Okay, 91. I remember Steve Empton was one of my major disappointments.
Okay, well that was
year that was, Andy.
That was injuries, but here's the thing: I walk in and people are buzzing about Kiper's got Jeff George. He thinks he's the 89th best prospect. He's out of his mind. And he was taken number one. Colts, in fact, traded up to get the hometown guy. And as it turned out, maybe he wasn't the 89th best prospect, but he had a career that was not as good as it could have been given his arm talent. And it was because of his head and because of other influence in his life. We've heard some things about Caleb Williams. Do you discount those things, or would you look at him in the same way you kind of looked at it with Jeff George years ago?
It's a hard one, Andy. It's a hard one because there were a lot of different things you hear, and I factored in a lot with Jeff George and Caleb Williams. I remember watching him play high school football. Maybe that's because I saw him at Gonzaga and I followed his career very closely. I understand what people are saying. I get it. But yeah, it's a different world now. Look at NIL, and he's on commercials. He's almost a pro before you're a pro, right? So it's different than it was back then. That was 92, by the way, with Steve Empton, was 92 draft. But in terms of the 90 draft with Jeff George, I'll tell you another quick story, Andy. Freddie Godelli's producing the draft in 1990. He wanted my top 40 list. Top 40, right? So he could put graphics up for the top 40 players the morning of the draft. I send him the list. He says, Mel, where's Jeff George? I said, he's like 84.
89, as I remember. Yeah.
It's 89, whatever. You've got a better memory than I do, Andy. So I said, whatever number I gave him, he said, Mel, I can't put up a graphic the morning draft for the number one pick not being on there. I said, well, Freddie, put him 40. So if you have to put him 40, if you got to put him on there, right?
Yep.
So that's how these things all happened. It's all amazing. I remember all these conversations you have about what we need to do and what's happening and what's going on. But you're right, Jay. It was just a gut feel. Rick Meyer had 33, I believe, the year he came out. And what's it, 93? Was Rick Meyer? I'm not with Bledsoe.
90.
Yeah, I think it was 93.
Yeah, same year as Bledsoe. Yeah. Same year.
Yeah, and Bledsoe went 1. And I remember being on the floor of the Marriott Marquis Grand Ballroom. We didn't even know. I didn't have really for sure. I remember seeing Lee Steinberg said it's going to be Drew, and that was the morning of Drake. Got that one right, luckily. But had Rick Meyer 33. He went number 2, and that's why Lou Holtz said I had a vendetta againt Notre Dame players, which I never did. As you know, I love Notre Dame.
Yeah, you love Jimmy Clausen. One of the great embarrassments of your career.
Yeah, Lou would talk to me. Lou ignored me, would talk to me, tried to get me fired one time. He hated me. So he said I had a vendetta against Notre Dame players, which I never did.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I could talk to you all day, but let's get to what else is going to happen here. The Commanders obviously need help on the offensive line. They need help in the secondary, and maybe even another receiver. They have 6 picks in the top 100. Let's start on the offensive line. Who do you think might be there after they pick number 2?
Well, I'll tell you what, when you get down to where they're picking early in the second round, I'll tell you a couple offensive linemen out of like Roger Rosengarten out of Washington, played right tackle for 2 years, starter, did a heck of a job. Now, he had the hiccups of the holding, where I always remember that penalty, called back that key play, but that happens, and that was iffy anyway. But Roger Rosengarten, who had a great, really ran 4.92, and I don't really care about that for offensive line, but he's a talented kid. And he had a really good year opposite Troy Fautanu, the left tackle, who's going to go somewhere early to mid-first round. So Rosengarten from Washington and Jordan Morgan. We had him on the Daria Mel show Saturday, Andy. Great kid, had an injury 2 years ago, came back from it this year, played really well, got better. He said he wasn't 100% until midway through the season. Jordan Morgan has shorter arms than you prefer for left tackle, which is what he played. So he'll either be a right tackle, more than likely a guard. So he has that versatility to play anywhere. So Rosengarten and Morgan would be good picks at that point. And the receivers, Andy, there's going to be a ton. I have 27 receivers with grade inside the 4th round. So if you need a receiver, you can wait a little bit and hopefully you pick the right one. They're not going to be all great, but if you pick the right one, and a kid I like is Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. Great after the catch, and a tough kid, kind of a Debo Samuel type. So there's going to be a ton of receivers go in the first 3 or 4 rounds.
Okay, and then in the secondary, some names that might be available there?
Well, for that pick, I think you're looking at a guy I really like. I think he's the most underrated player in the draft. And you can mark this one down and see how it turns out. You'll say in 3 years, no, you said this guy was underrated. He's a bust. He didn't play. But I really like TJ Tampa from Iowa State. He's a former wide receiver in high school. He was kind of under the radar at Iowa State with the Cyclones, and he had a really good finish to his career. He's got length. He's got ball skills. He's got anticipation and awareness, and he'll tackle. I like TJ Tampa. Kamari Lassiter from Georgia is a nice player. Didn't run great, but he's a really good player. player. So he's kind of a name to keep an eye on. And Mikey Sainristil still from Michigan is gaining steam. He was a former wide receiver. Jim Harbaugh raved about him. He's a kid to watch. Got it. Max Melton from Rutgers is another one in that general vicinity, Andy. But I'm a big fan of T.J. Tampa from Iowa State. And I'll tell you what, if Kool-Aid McKinstry, it's a name, Kool-Aid McKinstry slipped down that far. He ran a 4.48 despite having a Jones fracture. Had a good career at Alabama. Everybody said, hey, he's probably going to run 4.55. He'll be a second-round pick. That's what I was told. That's what I thought maybe he would. Ran 4.48 despite the injury. He's a press corner, tough kid. Played a lot of great football for Nick Saban, who loves Kool-Aid McKinstry. If he's there, I think he could be an interesting guy to see about.
Well, we had Clinton Dix here, so why not have a guy named Kool-Aid? That would be one more good name for them. And the last thing is defensive end. Obviously, with Sweat and Young both gone, they may be looking there for a rusher. Any names? Because this is a coach coming in after having Micah Parsons. He's got to have somebody who can rush the passer.
Yeah, Chop Robinson could maybe be there. I have him going in the late first round. Kid out of Penn State who didn't have great sack numbers, Andy, but he had great workout numbers. So he's a guy could maybe be in that mix at that point. But I have him going a little bit earlier than that. Adisa Isaac from Penn State who played opposite Chop Robinson, doesn't have great workout numbers, but was a really good player. So those are a couple guys there, Andy, I think have a chance to maybe be in the mix. It's not a good year. It is not a year for those types of players. Wow. It is a big drop off. A kid I like in the fourth round is Brennan Jackson out of Washington State, but it's not a year for true defensive ends. So Latu is probably going to go in the first round. He's got that neck issue, but he's got a clean bill of health now. He's a really good player, but he'll probably be gone by then. Chris Braswell from Alabama will be more of a late second, third. So it's not a really good year for the edge guys in this draft.
All right, and the last thing is, these people, you work with them over the years. Adam Peters, does he have enough of a track record as an assistant to get an idea as to the kind of drafting he does, or do we now have to see how he does it in the first draft that he has control of?
Well, they always like to go in the train. Think about all the D linemen that were drafted there. It's going to be early, Andy, and of course they made the mistake with Trey Lance, but that was in a year where you didn't have with COVID a lot of information. So we learned from that. I mean, Trey Lance didn't have a lot of starts. Remember, he only had that one start against Central Arkansas that year, and he actually looked better running than throwing. So maybe because there wasn't enough information on him coming from a lower level of competition. Jayden Daniels at LSU. Jayden Daniels against Alabama. You're going to go the opposite of Trey Lance, right? Jayden Daniels against Alabama in his 2 years at LSU was lights out. Check those numbers out. I don't need to repeat it. Nick Saban, who was the best of all time and one of the best defensive minds of all time, in addition to the greatest head coach ever, couldn't stop Jayden Daniels in 2 years. So it's a big difference with Trey Lance and what he played against and what Jayden Daniels played against and excelled against. So that's why I think maybe he looks at that, Adam Peters, and hey, now I got a guy in the SEC for Alabama, did it at Arizona State. Herm Edwards compares Jayden Daniels to Randall Cunningham. Others say Lamar Jackson. Why not?
Why not? And we'll find out tonight, and love talking to Mel Kiper every year about the draft. Now, the way this lines up this year for Washington, they do not have a fourth-round pick, but they have 2 in the second round, 3 in the third, and they have 2 fifth-rounders, 6 of them, as we talked about, in the first 100. Pick number 2 tonight. If they stay there, which we assume that they will, then tomorrow they have rounds 2 and 3, and they could be busy, assuming they hold on to all the picks, or maybe they trade them away. But they've got pick number 36 in the second round, pick number 40 in the second round. That's the one they got from Chicago in the Montez Sweat deal. They also have pick number 67 in the third round. That's their own. From Seattle in the trade for the quarterback, they get pick number 78, and also they get pick number 100 in the Chase Young deal. So those picks could be made over the next 2 days. 1 in round 1, 2 in round 2, and 3 in round 3. No fourth rounder. Then they have 2 picks in the fifth round, pick number 139 and pick number 152, which they got from Seattle, and their own seventh rounder, pick 222. But there's a lot that could happen between now and then in terms of trading up, trading back. Maybe they get a fourth rounder. Who knows? But it all unrolls tonight as we get the draft underway finally at 8 o'clock tonight. We assume that Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 to the Chicago Bears. Anyway, that's it for me today. Mike Callow sits in for Tony next. We'll have a full draft recap tomorrow morning. I'll see you then at 9 a.m.